Okay, so we are live again this evening, and I'm really excited. So this evening, I'll dive into who we have with us, but we are continuing our Blight discussion around with our City of Rockford staff. So we're going to be talking about Blight in our neighborhoods, and to me, Blight really drags down our property values and is haven for criminal activity. So it's really important that we as a city address it, and I think we've done a phenomenal job in large part due to three amazing folks on with us tonight. But before we get into the discussions on Blight, we've had some big news happen this week in the city of Rockford. Historic news. We have a brand new police chief in Carla Red, and she is, so it's now Chief Carla Red, which has a nice ring to it, and she's going to do a phenomenal job leading our wonderful police department. And we have Michelle Panko, who is now Chief Panko, and will do a great job leading our fire department as we move ahead. It's really been a joy to see them already dive into their positions. I've now also met with both of them about some of their future plans, so things are getting exciting. Second topic I want to mention to you is COVID. It certainly is not gone, and now with the new Delta variant, it is very well, it is in our community and alive and well. We need to continue, and I sound like a broken record, but we need to continue to practice the social distancing, wearing a face covering when in close proximity, especially those who are unvaccinated. And to those who are unvaccinated, let's get vaccinated. Now we've seen some FDA approvals come out, and I would really urge you to get vaccinated, and you can visit www.wchd.org/bus. And we'll provide that in the chat for you so that you can visit that to find the times and locations where the vaccination bus will be at. And it's absolutely free. Last thing I want to touch on is the residential roof program. We're now accepting pre-applications for a residential roof program on a first come, first served basis. The program is available to income eligible homeowners and can provide financial assistance to cover the construction costs to rehabilitate a roof. The home must be a single family owner occupied and located inside the city of Rockford. Financial assistance is provided through a 3-year forgivable mortgage loans, subject to eligibility requirements. Specific program requirements and instructions on how to complete the online pre-application are available on our website, and we'll absolutely put that in the chat for all of you to follow. But it's a phenomenal residential roof program, and would urge you, if you meet the income qualifications, please do apply. And again, tonight we're talking about Blight, and we have Nick Meyer, who is the City of Rockford's legal director. We have Jesse Schaefer, who's the neighborhood stabilization officer, and we have Brooke Benoit, who is a city attorney for Rockford. So we are really fortunate to have these three folks who help lead many of our efforts in fighting blight in our community. So Nick, I'm going to start with you, and just as legal director, kind of in some ways the tip of the spear on some of these items. Can you talk a little bit about your overall philosophy in fighting blight?
Sure, and thanks for having us. I think it's important for the public to know sort of what we're doing, what we have done, and some of the issues we face on a day-to-day basis, because blight is a problem, and fighting blight is also often not as easy as people think it is. From an overall organizational philosophy, this really is a team effort. So our team that goes out and deals with problem properties is legal, it's CD, it's fire, it can be police, it's also in human services at times. So it really is a team of people across all departments that really works together. Ultimately, we always say that our philosophy is we want to drive compliance. We're not trying to be punitive. We do have fines that we issue, but it is as a last resort when all of our other measures haven't worked out, whether that's providing assistance. Oftentimes it's education. A lot of times it's just Jesse going out to a property and knocking on the door and talking to somebody. We are all along the way trying to achieve compliance, and when fines don't work and we've got to have Brooke file a court case, while we're going in, we'll let people know we're not going to let up on the gas, but anytime you want to come to the table and be serious about addressing your property, we're here to help with whatever way we can. Sometimes we have grant opportunities. Sometimes it's just somebody needs to connected with the appropriate contractor. Sometimes it's somebody who needs help or family member does with Health Human Services. Maybe it's a hoarding issue, maybe it's a money issue. So all along, all we want to do is get the properties up to compliance so they are contributing to the neighborhood and the health of the neighborhood, and they're not driving that down, because blighted properties, especially when we see vacant homes, they are detrimental, they're horrible to our blocks. We see the decreased property values, they're havens for criminal activity, they look horrible, and they become a health and safety issue, and they can become dangerous depending on who's in the house. We see on occasion where fires are set because of vacant houses. Oftentimes that's because people are living there and they shouldn't be there, and it's a danger. Somebody's going to get hurt or killed, and it has happened in, thank God, not recently in Rockford, but in other surrounding municipalities. So end of the day, we just want properties to be safe and compliant and contributing to the neighborhood.
Absolutely, and I think you say that well, Nick, and I've been to a lot of neighborhood meetings, maybe not as many as Jesse, but close. And really, Jesse, one of the biggest things we constantly hear in our neighborhood meetings is how it's a blight. And often it's not numerous blighted properties. It's that one or two properties that are really just either driving residents crazy, dragging down property values, as Nick said, or there's criminal element hanging around those properties. When you're at a neighborhood meeting or someone's watching this right now, how do residents file those complaints about issues in their neighborhood?
The best way that they can file complaints is going on to the City of Rockford website, and there's an actual tab where you can submit a service request. Why I like this is the best way to do it is because you can follow it from when we go out. It will give you updates. It will tell you if we found a violation. It will tell you if we started a case, and you're able to check on it throughout the process without having to give us a call to check on it.
Yeah, and so residents hear that and really understand it's really an awesome tool. So you can go in, I believe, Jesse, as a guest and just simply submit your request. You don't have to give us a lot of your own information.
Nope.
Or you can actually create an account and you can actually track your own City of Rockford staff's progress on that case. Because, Jesse, am I right that sometimes folks may not think that something's happening, but, we've been out there, we've inspected. Is that right?
Yes, correct. That happens a lot. Sometimes our process is a little slower than people like because we're following our legal process. So we are working on it, and it's a great tool for them to be able to go in and check in to make sure that we're still following up with it.
Absolutely. One more question, I guess, right away for you, Jesse, is when you're at those neighborhood meetings or you're getting emails and these requests, what are some of those most common requests that you're getting?
Well, we're still, it just rained, so we're still in the middle of weed season. Sanitation, a lot of garbage bags not secured, dumpster enclosures being overfilled, vehicles. Those are our main complaints that we get on a daily basis.
Absolutely. Thank you. And just a quick break for a couple of items. What about the blight at Mill in South Main? It's been a mess for probably 3 years from Doug. Doug, truthfully, it's been a mess for a lot longer than 3 years, probably closer to 30 years than 3 years. I think you're referring to Barbara Coleman. It's something that, truthfully, Doug, we've had a whole host of potential developments for. We've done quite a bit of work there from an environmental standpoint to get that site ready for development. Probably the most recent one that pains me to mention it, but is hoping that we would get the Rock Valley College ATC located there, which truthfully I still think it should have been. But yeah, we are actively marketing that property, and truthfully in the last probably 6 months, we've had a couple of people share interest in that. But great question, Doug. It's been a mess and we're well aware of it. Thank you. Barbara Nickel, yeah, aesthetics will keep crime down. Actually, Barbara, I would say it's more than aesthetics. It's about the quality of life in neighborhoods, and it actually is proven to help keep crime down. So thanks for the comment. Nick, I'm going to go back to you, and can you talk to us a little bit about the land bank and why it's important?
Sure. One of the land banking is becoming more popular in Illinois and across the country as a way to fight blight. It's one of the things that we could not do without home rule. One of the reasons we wanted to get home rule is to establish our own land bank. We were able to partner with Belvedere and other municipalities and the county of Winnebago to get ours up and running using Belvedere's home rule authority. There's a couple benefits of having a land bank. One is it's easier to transfer properties both into the land bank, but also out of the land bank. They also have potentially better means to maintain properties that they do have. They have a better ability to get properties off the tax roll back into a private hands and rehab a lot faster. For example, if we the city owned a property, we really don't own that many property. The process for us to get that back on the tax roll is actually quite cumbersome. It's not easy to do. It takes quite a long time. If we can get some of our properties over to the land bank, that's great. Better yet, the land bank, as long as when it gets more and more funding, can go purchase those properties from a tax sale, from the owner themselves, or from the trustee, and sort of not have to wait for those properties to get so bad that the only last resort is a municipality or a county taking it over. So the great thing about a land bank is it sort of gets in there and stops that cycle of blight, hopefully at the beginning or before a property becomes to the point where we can't do anything with it.
Always helps to speak when I'm not muted. So another program that I think is talked a lot about, but can be a little bit cumbersome, is the Trustee Program. Can you talk a little bit about that? Who runs it, and maybe why has it changed, or how are some of those changes been done?
Sure. What you're referring to is the Winnebago County Trustee Program. It's a creature of statute. In essence, is this: we have properties that where taxes have gone delinquent. Investors can purchase those taxes and either wait for the property owner to redeem those with a premium, a pretty high interest rate, or they can declare what's called a sale in error. There may be a blemish on the property. Sometimes these properties go through a cycle of that there's a tax buyer, the person moves out, and it's what we call like a zombie property. After a couple of those, the county trustee can step in. So it's the Winnebago County acting as trustee for all of the other taxing bodies. And then what they try to do is sell or market those properties and then recoup the costs and pay them, the whatever it is, a $500 goes at an auction. The city of Rockford would get a small portion of that back. That used to be, it still is run by the county. They have now engaged our insistence, Region 1 Planning Council as the agent for the trustee. We had a previous agent, like a real estate agent, who was supposed to be managing that property or that program. Quite frankly, wasn't really doing what was paid to do, and that there was really no effort to sell properties. There's only auctions like once a year. Now that Region 1 has taken over that, there's a constant sale of properties to get properties back on the tax sale. It's actually been quite successful in the short amount of time they've had the property or the program. They've done a remarkable job of getting those properties out and maintaining them. One of the issues we had with the trustee program was that we were still at taxpayer expense mowing lots, boarding up lots, and it was costing the city of Rockford $250,000 a year. We were not able to recoup those. Now the Region 1 Planning Council is doing that. They are maintaining those properties at no cost to the city of Rockford or any other taxing body. They use the funds in that program based on the proceeds of the tax sale to do that. So it's a really big win for the city of Rockford and really the county as a whole.
Absolutely. Nick, not to put you on the spot, and if you don't know, we can certainly throw it in the chat for you. But Brian just asked a really good question. How can we find out more information on the trustee properties? Would that just be reaching out to Region 1 Planning?
Yeah, I would start with going out to the Region 1 website. If I'm not mistaken, they have links to that and how you can bid on properties and when that bidding process takes place.
No, that's helpful. And Brian, we're going to throw my email in there for you. So just email me. I'll make sure that you get directly connected to Region 1. And Region 1 deserves a lot of credit. They've done a really good job with the land bank as well as working through the trustee program. So hats off to Mike Dunn as well as Eric Setter and the rest of the team over at Region 1. So want to pull you into this conversation, Brooke. You are tasked with one of the projects that's been in the news recently, and that's the Elks Building. Recently had a roof collapse, and what's being done to help remedy that situation?
Yeah, so I know that property's been a problem for a little while now. It's for as long as I've been here, it's been an issue. And I know we've had several court appearances on it, and it was just continuance after continuance and excuses for more time. And I know that I had met with several attorneys about the property to try to, figure out what we're going to do, bring it up to compliance, or if the property needs to be demolished. And we finally did get a trial date, and we got a result from that trial. And so the owner has until January of 2022 to either bring the property into compliance or to demolish the property. And if it's not done by that date, then the city will be able to take action.
Awesome. Thanks. And thanks for your persistence on that. Speaking of projects that took some time, but ended up with some very good resolutions, at least in my opinion, Nick, will you talk to us about some of the recent successes you've seen in the department, the city has seen with Magna, with Essex, with the former nursing home on North Main, and talk a little bit about how those came to get to a resolution after so many years of just sitting there blighted?
Sure. So, one of the issues we have is, trying to be creative with especially some of these larger properties. In years past, what you would do is if you had an Essex building or Magna, you would sort of site the property, find them, and then, there's sort of prevailing opinion that there was not much more we could do. As we started looking at Blight more and we started working more as a team, we started trying to see what could we do to be a bit more creative, try things that we think we can do within the bounds of the law that have not either been tried before or are relatively new. And so for each of those properties that you addressed, they're sort of unique in that we took different but similar tacks with them, and each of them sort of came out of different people on the team throwing out different suggestions and sort of a light bulb going off, and we decided to do it. For example, and that includes the legal department and the CD staff and even the fire staff. Just think, what about this idea? Let's try this, and it worked. In Essex, for example, we had, people can remember, that was supposed to be redeveloped. We had a guy who came in and partially demoed it, left massive piles of scrap, and then took the money out and left. And there was a corporate owner from the president of the corporation lived in Arizona. The corporation was based out of Washington State, and just was content to it's Rockford, we're just going to leave it. The property is owned by a corporation. So typically when a property is owned by a corporation, that's problematic because the purpose of owning things in a corporation or in a trust is to insulate the actual person from liability. So that's why people do it. It was a really big challenge for us. And so, in this case, we decided, there's a sort of quirk in the law that says if a property owner is owned by a corporation or there's any order against a corporation and the principal officer does not direct the corporation to follow a court order, that principal officer may be found liable. So we decided to sort of keep pulling on the string. So that we went through code hearing, got a fine of $50,000. The corporation paid the $50,000 because they were sitting on millions. They didn't care, and they were sort of like, Rockford, go away. Well, we finally got the judge to order that the property be demolished, and the corporate officer didn't take the step. So we asked the judge in that case to hold the CEO or the president liable and actually issue a warrant for his arrest for failing to direct the corporation and essentially allow it to be in contempt. And the judge really kind of looked onto that, and it got to the point where the ultimatum was to the president of the corporation: either you come here from Arizona, either you pay for the demolition, or I'm gonna issue a multi-state warrant. And it wasn't until that time that we were taken seriously, and ultimately the the property owner, the corporate property owner, demolished the building. And it was one of those things where it was, all of the typical roadblocks were thrown up, but we kept going at it, tried this thing, stuck in court, and it worked. That dovetailed into the old nursing home just down the road on North Main Street. This time we used our code of ordinances against that. This is another property that was owned by an LLC, but we had two members of the LLC, managing members. And what our ordinance actually says, it's not the LLC or the owner of the property who can always be held liable, but it's whoever's in control of the property. And we sort of took the opinion, or another staff member said, well, the corporation is not in control, but the members are. And so we cited the two principal owners of the building, or the LLC, personally in our code hearing, and sought a massive fine against them. And they just happened to be continuing to operate nursing homes in the suburbs. And so, we got them in. They tried the old route of not being held liable because they're the corporate protections, and the hearing officer disagreed and said, no, you're in control. I'm going to hold you liable essentially for the cost of this demolition. And that afternoon, we were able to have counsel for both of the attorneys up in our office, and we were able to negotiate another settlement where the corporate officers agreed to pay the bulk of the demolition costs, and we were able to get that building down. And then the Magna property was just sort of good old-fashioned negotiating. That was a property where the property owner was allowing, sort of warehousing the property, paying the taxes, likely to show on their books that this property was worth something, but it was a blight. It was stopping development in that quarter that the city of Rockford and those business owners have been trying to redevelop for years. And so, we approached the CBS to own the building about, buying the building, turning it over, and they started with offering to turn the property over to the city of Rockford for $1 million. We said no. We kind of kept at it, let them know we've had these recent successes with nursing home with Essex. If you don't take steps, we're going to go in and start fining you because this is a blight. And ultimately, as we went through that, we got them to transfer ownership of the property for us and also pay for $150,000 in the demolition costs. And that covered, again, at least half, if not 75% of the cost. So, the reason those things are successful is a couple things. They took a long time when they demonstrated to people, usually out-of-town corporate owners, that we're not business as usual. We're going to keep pulling on the string until a court tells us we can't do it. And then the other thing was, it was a success in that, this is a team effort. It was different people with different ideas. And then, backing each other up and moving forward and being willing to test the theories and see how far we can push it. And so, that's sort of continued to build our confidence and continue to result in more and more successes.
Well, thank you. And, for folks watching this, Nick talked about 5 minutes for that, but that was...
I apologize.
Lots of effort that went into it from not just Nick, but an entire city team, and just a huge wins. I mean, if you can just remember seeing, you drive up North Main past the roundabout and you have the nursing home that's just, there was trees growing out of it. You drive up further and you have Essex right next to a brand new Rosecrans, so right across the street from what was going to be then what is now brand new Swedish American. So to see those come down, those help change what the potential could be on North Main. So a big thank you. One other thing that's standing in the way of some potential on North Main is what looks like apocalypse now, which is the Atwood Building. So Brooke, what's going on with the Atwood Building? Folks are driving by it, they see it run down. What's the city's approach with that?
Yeah, so we've approached it from 2 ends. We've started a code hearing case where we took a little bit of a different spin on it. We cited the owner of the property as well as the insurance company. And we wanted to bring them both into code hearing. That trial is set. It has not happened yet, but the trial and code hearing is set. And we plan to, obviously, like I said, have the insurance company as well as the owner's attorney there. And then we've also filed a case in circuit court doing the same, I guess, taking the same approach, but it's a circuit court case. So that process was going to take a little bit longer, and we haven't had an appearance yet on that case.
So again, for folks watching at home, this is really important because if the city was just to go in and clean it up, and absolutely, I drive by it all the time as well, it does look awful. But if the city was just to go in and clean that up, that's your tax dollars that are cleaning up someone else's problem. And I think we all believe that tax dollars are precious. We want to make sure that these are your hard-earned dollars. We want to make sure that if we can have someone else pay for their problem, we need to make every effort to do that. Now, we won't leave it that way forever, but we need to make every good faith effort that we can to help protect those tax dollars and hold those folks accountable for their own mess. So appreciate
one of the things that Brooke left out is the unique thing is that when we were going after the insurance company, that's also one of those sort of light bulb moments that this is a unique property that has insurance and it has not really been done before that we're aware of. So it's another one of those attempts to be creative. And as far as we can tell, it has worked. And until we did that, we heard nothing. And we're hearing now through Nelson Stostrom, our code official, that the owner has now potentially reached a deal with the insurance company to cover the cost of demolition. And they are now reaching out to local demo contractors. And if it hadn't been for Brooke and Rob Willing, our city staff, taking that check, that wouldn't have happened. And so it's just another along those lines of, we have a problem, the old way is not going to work, what can we do differently here in this unique situation? So they're doing a really good job with that property, I think.
And I'll just say, no one ever thought attorneys are creative, but you guys are being very creative, so thank you. So we have a couple more questions for the team. If you're watching and you have questions, please throw them in the chat. We'll do our best to get to them in the time that we have allotted. A couple of questions, Jesse, and I guess I'm going to throw two at you is, can you walk me through and walk the listeners through what is that process? So they've submitted that complaint, they've submitted the issue. What is the internal process that they may not see, just to have an understanding of what that is? And I guess the last part of that is, what's something that you and all the work that you do just really wish folks understood or knew about code enforcement?
So we kind of have two ways our cases go in code enforcement. We have stuff that we can clean up, and then we have stuff that will go through the hearing process. Our main goal is compliance. It's not to take them to hearing, it's not to fine them. We want to work with our residents on getting things cleaned up. However, we know sometimes that's just not going to happen. So if I'm going to take a case to code hearing, one of the inspectors will go out, they'll go check the property and send the property owner a letter to comply with. Usually we give them about a 2-week notice. We'll go back in 2 weeks. We'll check to see if the violation has made progress, if it's clean, if it's not clean. If a lot of times the property owners will contact us. If we see they're making progress, we will work with them. We will give them more time. If we go out to the property and nothing's been done, it's worse, then we send them to our code hearing process, which then from the time that they fail, it could take 30 days to get a code hearing process or a date to go into. So a lot of time people are like, you guys aren't doing anything. It's a long process to be able to send it to code hearing. And we hear it all the time. And I have to explain this all the time, that it's not that we're not doing anything. It's just, it's a long process. Cleaning is a different case. We typically, if they fail at their reinspection, we'll send it out to our contractor within a week to 2 weeks, and they have a week to comply to get that cleaned. We're busy. We have 3 inspectors that deal with the blight outside. They work extremely hard. From January 1st, we have already went out and responded to over 3,220 service requests that we've received. So we're out there working. You guys may not think it, but there's 3 of us, them plus me, that are going out trying to fight these, blight issues. Kind of going off the Atwood property, Yes, we know there's a vacant lot next to it. Yes, we know that it's getting dumped on. We are watching it. We are getting it cleaned. We have dumping cameras up. So we are working on getting that cleaned up.
So Jesse, talking about that, you just mentioned dumping cameras. That's somewhat new tactic that we've utilized. Can you talk a little bit about that? We had a question regarding dumping of tires and things of that nature. Could you touch on those cameras and the dumping of tires?
Yes. We last summer got some cameras up, or purchased cameras to put in our local dumping spots, because dumping is becoming a huge issue in all these vacant lots or alleys. And we're starting to go after the people that are dumping. We work close with the police. We get license plates. Police will then give them a ticket, and we will give them the bill that it cost us to clean up the mess that they dumped. We currently have them at 7 different locations, and we're actively catching people. It's working. We're getting reimbursed from these dumpers because they don't want any further action taken. So that's helping a lot. TVs and tires, they're a problem. Keep Illinois Beautiful is on Saturdays, I believe. I can't remember the dates. That's where you can dump off the TVs and tires.
Yep, and we can add some information about it that's on our site regarding Keep Northern Illinois Beautiful, the days to drop off, and for some instances there is a fee to drop certain equipment off.
Yes.
So I guess just have a couple last questions here. And Brooke, going back to you, what leads a property to be demolished?
Yeah, so it's definitely a long process. It starts by either it came to our attention through a complaint, or because it's hard to miss, like a lot of these bigger properties that we've talked about. So once it comes to our attention, though, we typically will file a circuit court case, and that's a case for a demolition. But we have to meet certain standards in order for the property to be demolished through the courts. So those standards are set by statute. A couple of those include it has to be an immediate and continuing hazard to the community. It has to be open, it has to be vacant, and it has to be beyond reasonable repair. And beyond reasonable repair means it's going to cost more to fix the property than it would to demo the property. So typically it's what leads it to being demolished is it meets those standards, it comes to our attention, and so we need to address it. There have been instances that individuals do end up repairing the property, and so then the demolition case would get dismissed because the property is in compliance, and obviously that would be best because then we have a beautiful property that's there and livable. But typically, if it can't be because it's beyond reasonable repair, then it will be demolished.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Brooke. And last question, I told you guys 30 minutes, we're a little over, but so I appreciate the time you're giving. Couple of things here for you, Nick, as we just close out. How does state law impact what we do as we try to fight blight locally? And what is the city doing down in Springfield, Illinois, to address and potentially shape state law?
Well, it's a good question. So Brooke and Jesse both touched on it a little bit, that, the process we have to go through both for filing a demolition case, or even just getting properties cleaned up, that's just a nuisance property. There are state restrictions on what the timing is, when we can do it based on certain criteria, how long we have to give somebody to do it, and then also our ability to recoup costs. And so, when Jesse talks about it taking a long time, sometimes that's because we have to wait a certain amount of days, or we have to give a certain amount of notice, and it takes time to do all of that. One of the things we did at the state level was look at properties that are abandoned, not necessarily to the extent where they need to be demolished, but abandoned. And they're the ones we see that aren't that bad, that a lot of people assume the city owns, but we don't own, but nobody owns them. They're zombie properties. And we all sort of watch them implode and deteriorate to the point where they can't be rehabbed. Part of that was because the state statute said that the cities couldn't step in and declare them abandoned and get control of those until they became dangerous and unsafe. And the interpretation of that has been is when it becomes an issue that somebody's going to get hurt. And that usually means that, if there's a hole in the roof, it's at the point where the property's going to implode. So we all sit there and all the neighbors in the city watch until that happens. And so we were active in a statewide task force that Senator Steve Stottleman established to look at how the state statutes can be amended to help cities get control of these properties quicker. And we proposed language that was ultimately, after 2 years of negotiating, adopted by the state and signing into law just in July, amending the law now to change that criteria from dangerous and unsafe to a property that impairs public health, safety, and welfare. And it seems small, but what that means is essentially a nuisance standard, right? If a property is 2 years of delinquent taxes, is unoccupied, nobody's there, we no longer have to wait for it to implode upon itself. We just have to be at the point where it's a public safety issue. It could be a house that has a lot of crime. It could be overgrown with weeds. It could be noxious fumes. We can go in there and try to get that property faster through an abandonment petition. Another thing we did in that legislation, and we worked with the council for both our actual local land bank, but also the Cook County Land Bank, was to speed up the process by which we take a property and give it over to a land bank or another, actually a land bank. And so what it used to be is if the city took control of property, we have to keep it, we have to go through a court foreclosure process, and then we have to go through publication, take bids, and so on. It's another 2-3 month delay. Now what that legislation says is that property can be transferred right from a judge once he declares it abandoned right to our land bank. The land bank can then put money into it and sell it and get it back on the tax rolls as fast as possible. There's also legislation that specifically allows the trustee to use funds from the program to maintain, demolish, or mow properties, just to give specific legislative authority that they can do that without having to require the city of Rockford to do that, because under the previous agent, he would say, well, there's no specific authority for me to mow this property, so the city's got to take care of it. So we're actively trying to find ways to amend stuff, but going through Springfield, a lot of people, it's very difficult to do. These are really straightforward, common sense fixes that we introduced in the previous legislative session that never made it for a final vote because people objected for one reason or the other. Finally, we were able to get it through at the 11th hour this summer, but it wasn't easy and it wasn't slam dunk. So, it's a lot, and we'll keep going back and getting more. But those small things we think are going to help pay dividends. We're already seeing them pay dividends right now.
Yeah, we certainly have a strong local delegation that represents us in Springfield, but Nick just mentioned the word common sense in Springfield in the same sentence, and few would do that because they just don't seem to understand what many residents are dealing with in their own neighborhoods. And so appreciate the advocacy, Nick, that you do in Springfield as well. Just want to say it's really easy for us to say that fighting Blight's a priority, but we would not be where we're at in our fight against Blight without Jesse, without Nick, without Brooke, and without so many others on our city team working tirelessly to improve neighborhoods and the quality of life for residents. So to Brooke, Nick, and Jesse, thank you. Thank you for the work that you do every day on behalf of the citizens. It really is an honor just to be a small part of your team. So thanks again for the work that you do, and hope everyone has a wonderful night. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.